I think that's always been a huge goal of mine, is really bringing the community back to agriculture and really understanding that, we should be asking these questions of where our food and our water is coming from. And then also being able to taste the difference in it. Nobody thinks about what's in your water, because when you're a kid, you're given water and it's in the sink and you just don't even ask the question. I don't really care, in a sense, whether you buy maple water or not. Like, I hope that you do, because I'm super passionate about it.
Hi, welcome back to Recipe to Revenue. I'm your host, Leah Messina, and I'm here today with Nicole Bentler, and she is the founder of Pocono Mountain Farms, and it's a family-owned maple farm about 2 hours outside of New York City, right, Nicole?
Yeah, 2 hours outside of New York City and 2 hours outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah, so perfectly located, easy access to all those big cities, but beautiful setting in a peaceful space in the Poconos. And you host great hospitality there, weddings, educational events, and now you have a CPG product that has joined us on the marketplace. And we're going to chat about that today. So your Pocono maple water, I'll show it on screen real quick here, which I've had the pleasure of tasting this past week, and everybody in my household is a fan. I love the slight sweetness to it without it being overwhelming like so many drinks on the market, and get over the boring water flavor that, sometimes it's just hard to get down after like your fifth cup of the day. So really excited to try out the product. And Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's been incredible. It's been such a whirlwind. Like you said, we have this incredible farm that we're able to harvest the product from, and we're able to also use that for community. So it's been such a great journey bringing this product to life. And it's really our second year roughly. We launched last year, so it's been great. We've kind of gotten such similar feedback that it's just kind of refreshing when you need to drink water, but you don't want to drink any more water, or you're looking for something that's a little bit more sweeter, that's just gonna break it up. It's always like a nice thing to kind of go to and grab, and it's not gonna give you a huge sugar rush or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very excited to dig into how you came about all of this. But let's kind of start and give a little bit of background to the farm and how you got that part of the business going.
Yeah, so the farm is kind of one of those things that fell into our laps, which sounds insane, because who just, all of a sudden owns a 450-acre farm? I was looking to kind of get back to my roots and go back to Pennsylvania, and lo and behold, this 450-acre farm kind of fell into our laps. But kind of rewind, and I grew up in the Pocono Mountains, and I was always around agriculture, and my grandfather raised bees, and we had honey and all of that good stuff. And on my mother's side, my great grandfather used to harvest sap and make maple syrup with his kids. But by the time I got to me, I actually never really did maple syrup. So maple syrup's kind of been a very new thing for me. And it's been incredible. My background's health, wellness, and fitness. So, as soon as I turned 18, I got as far away as I could. I traveled extensively and did, sales and marketing, but mostly for fitness, wellness, and health. So it was kind of incredible when we kind of took on this farm, finding out how maple syrup is so good for you, and is one of the cleanest sources of sugar you can get on the planet. It actually has a ton of immune boosting benefits, but maple syrup gets this really terrible bad rap because most of the stuff that's in the market has a ton of corn syrup and preservatives, and isn't that healthy for you? So if you're actually eating and using real maple syrup, it's so good for you. So it's been an incredible wild ride of really kind of demystifying maple syrup just in general. But then, the very first product that comes out of the tree is maple water, or sap. So that's kind of been like our other big educational piece of, we have people, we do tours and tastings on the farm every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, people come out, and when they see, we let them try the maple water, we pour it into little cups for them. And they're like, wait, this is what maple syrup comes from? And I have to explain, like, maple syrup's actually a concentrate of maple water. And kind of like you were saying, a lot of people would think, oh, then it must be super sweet.
Hmm.
And I'm like, no, not at all. It's actually usually less than 2% sugar, and it's
Yeah.
very similar to a spring water. It's just going to have a little subtle maple flavor at the end. But if I didn't tell you it was maple water, you probably wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
And I think people are super shocked when they find that out.
Yeah, definitely. I've tried it like at different times of the day to just kind of like experience like do I sense the sweetness more or less, like whether I'm really thirsty or coming back from, doing some exercise or just, to start the day off. And I think I keep being surprised every time I go to sip it that it is not as sweet as you would expect it, but it's really just like the perfect little, difference in flavor than just like, certainly tap water, right?
It's been so interesting, like really bringing this product to life, because I also think that our bodies naturally recognize it. So maple water has been around for hundreds of years. Native Americans and indigenous communities have celebrated maple water and like the transition season. And, it really, maple syrup kind of became like a big thing in the early 1900s because it was so hard to get sugar in the Northeast.
Hmm.
Whereas now it's actually really hard to find a clean water source. So I think that our bodies just naturally recognize, like, I tell people all the time, it truly is one of the cleanest sources of water you get on the planet because it gets filtered by the tree. We're not adding anything to it. It's literally coming right from nature,
Yeah.
and you're getting all of those natural elements and recurring minerals that are coming from the soil. So I talk about it all the time that not all bottled water is created equal, and really, if you're getting a fresher product and it's clean source, your body's able to just recognize it, and you're like, oh, that's actually really good, because your body's able to, when it has those natural elements and minerals in it, your body's able to absorb it and actually hydrate quicker than if
Hmm.
you're to have something that's stripped of all of those natural occurring benefits.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So, in your family's history, the grandfather that did maple syrup, did he do any of this maple water part of it?
So the maple water is actually the very first product that comes out of the
Uh
tree.
huh.
So if you made maple syrup at all ever in your lifetime, any history of maple
Uh
syrup,
huh.
so they would essentially get sap or maple water, and then you boil that down to make maple syrup. So I talk
Okay.
to people all the time that like have harvested maple syrup or maple water or maple syrup in general. So
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I tapped like 5 or 6 of my trees in my backyard, and
Yeah.
the hard part is it usually takes 40 to 60 gallons of maple water or sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. So a lot of times smaller farms or smaller, like, you know, most of the time it's like homeowners that have a few maple trees, like they'll just drink the water because it takes
Yeah.
hours to boil it down to make maple syrup.
Sure.
Or they like would help a friend of a friend's farm, and they're like, I would just drink the sap. Like I would drink some sap and then I'd bring the rest back to the sugar shack.
Mm,
So essentially, you collect all of the sap or maple water.
yeah.
And like how our farm is, it's like pitched and it's on a vacuum system. So it brings it back to the sugar shack. So essentially, we
Hmm.
collect all of it at the sugar shack. And
Okay.
then if we're taking it to maple water, it just gets pumped into a big, basically kind of like a similar to like a dairy truck, a cooler truck that goes straight to a co-packing facility. When we're making maple syrup, it actually goes into a boiler system where we then cook it down to make
Hmm.
maple syrup. So
Okay.
yeah, so everyone's always like, if you've made maple syrup or done maple syrup at
Yeah.
all, you've usually experienced maple water, and everyone's like, it is so good, it's so fresh.
Yeah.
The hardest part has been, I think, figuring out how to bottle it, figuring out pasteurization, all of these other little things to
Yeah.
really bring it to life. And I think the other biggest component has been education. If you've never tapped a tree, which
Hmm.
probably 98% of the population has never tapped a
Yeah.
tree. And like, cause a lot of times people climb trees as a kid and you think
Hmm.
like, oh, and like even I did, like before
Hmm.
owning the maple farm, like I climbed a tree as a kid, you see like sap coming out of the pine
Hmm.
trees and it looks kind of like maple syrup. So
Right.
like you just assume that that's where maple syrup comes from. So unless if you're in the industry or know somebody that's in the industry or maybe helped a farm and have seen it, they're the only ones that really truly know what maple water is. Or if you're from
Right.
Canada, it's their largest
Yeah.
export. There's a lot of maple water competitors that are up there. And, they know truly what it is, but especially as you start going farther and farther south, like I live part-time in South Florida, like everyone looks at me cross-eyed when I tell them like I
Mhm.
run a maple farm and I do maple
Yeah.
water. They're like,
Yeah.
"What?
Like, what?
Like,
What are
what
you
is
talking
that?"
about? Well, yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about how you actually come up with the final product. Like from out of the tree, you're putting it into the cooler truck, and then you mentioned pasteurization. So what else needs to happen before it's consumable?
So basically that's it. That's all of it in
Okay.
a nutshell. I was very against pasteurizing. I
Uh-huh.
was like, no, like I want to have it clean and all natural and raw, like kind of like, this everyone's doing like raw milk and things like that. Like let's try to
Yeah.
keep it as raw and as basic as possible.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, there's no shelf life. It's like maybe 60 days. So we had to do a hot flash pasteurization. So essentially, we collect. So we tap on our farm. We tap anywhere from 22 to 25,000 trees. We also
Hmm.
have the ability to buy sap from other farms, but generally, almost all of the sap is coming from our farm,
Hmm.
and it basically goes straight into a giant beverage truck, like a milk
Hmm.
container. It looks like a dairy truck.
Yeah.
And it goes into there. We usually send anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of sap. And then it goes to our co-packer. We use Brett's gonna kill me, but Brett's like our guy. He's the one that got us into
Hmm.
Steuben Foods up in Buffalo, New York.
Hmm.
So it travels from our farm up to Buffalo, which is about 4 hours from us.
Hmm.
Gets basically flash pasteurized and then bottled. And they bottle it in our bottles, and then
Hmm.
they keep it usually for about 2 to 3 weeks. They do like some testing, making sure that
Hmm.
it's good. And then once it passes all of the tests, they'll send it back to us. And then we essentially just do direct to consumer. And then we also have some local accounts that we
Hmm.
also sell product to.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's it in a nutshell. But I was super excited. So I was like super against pasteurizing. I was like, we're
Hmm.
going to lose all the benefits, and this isn't like, they have all this stuff. So we actually do a pre and a post analyst on the
Hmm.
nutritional panel, and like we don't lose anything. Like it's
Hmm.
super minimal, the amount that we lose. Like there's a ton of manganese in there, so it's really great for
Hmm.
your joints and stiffness. There's also like a bunch of other elements and
Hmm.
natural clearing minerals that are in maple water.
Yeah.
So what's great is like we lose none of it, which I
Yeah.
was like so shocked.
Yeah. Oh, that's great that you're able to do that. I mean, it's 70% of your daily value. I'm looking at the back of the bottle here for your manganese. So that's pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
so, uh, is there a season for the maple water? There's a season for syrup, right? So, how does
Yeah,
that
so
translate?
essentially it's the same thing. So that's probably the other biggest reason why maple water hasn't gone super mainstream, and I don't know if it ever really will.
Hmm.
And I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with
Hmm.
us being like a super small niche brand where you can come and you can see where your water is coming from, and
Hmm.
it's first come first serve basis. If you subscribe, you get the product.
Hmm.
But eventually we will probably sell out.
Yeah.
Um and I think that that's okay. Like I feel like we're
Hmm.
we're in this time of life that like we feel like we need to have everything, and it also has to be super accessible all the
Yeah.
time, and there's no seasonality.
Hmm.
Where I'm okay with having a little seasonality, and I think that
Yeah.
that's kind of been part of our mission is bringing
Hmm.
people back to agriculture and seeing where their
Yeah.
food comes from. But in saying that, we do produce a ton of maple water and sap, and what's great is we have no loss with the maple water.
Hmm.
Whereas when we basically create the maple syrup,
Yeah.
we lose a lot of product that way.
Sure.
In a sense, like it takes 40 to 60 gallons of sap or maple water to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. So,
Hmm.
that was also part of the reason we wanted to kind of shift is we'd be able to make more maple water and
Hmm.
to have that more accessible than just the syrup. And so yeah, so that's it's been such a fun wild ride, really kind of creating it and figuring out bottling and all of that good stuff too.
Yeah. What has been the most challenging part of your journey so far?
Whew. I feel like really figuring out the filtration on our side. So we semi-filter it on our side before we send it to Steuben,
Hmm.
and figuring out what that looks like. And then Steuben also has a requirement that it has to be under 43 degrees. And so basically our seasonality is about 6 weeks if we're lucky. It can be
Hmm.
3 to 6 weeks. Really, we've had some really short maple
Mm.
seasons, so if it's only 6 weeks, like there's a lot of time in there. Like so, we have to figure out negotiating our time on the beverage line,
Yeah.
and luckily. The time that maple syrup's happening and maple water is happening, it's not as busy for Steuben Foods at that time. So they let
Okay.
us fluctuate a little bit on
Hmm.
when our product's going to get there and when it's going to get bottled. And
Okay.
not all bottling companies are that flexible. Usually you get
Yeah.
this day, this hour, and that is it. Like I said, Brett has been amazing. He's originally from
Yeah.
Canada, so we came to him with this product, and that was probably the other biggest thing is finding a co-packer that was willing to
Hmm.
work with us. Like we're small mom and pop, we're not some big brand, then we're not looking to
Hmm.
do, run, 6 or 7 times on the line.
Yeah.
I think that was the other thing is we really needed somebody on the inside that was passionate about the product as much as we were. And so luckily, he was able to really kind of get us that green light. So it's really just it was really figuring out on our side the filtration, and then also finding that co-packer that's been amazing to work with and has given us that flexibility because of the seasonality of it.
Yeah.
We're never quite sure when we're going to get a really good run. So basically, you need that fluctuation in temperature. So you need the temperature to go, above 40, 45 degrees during the day. And then
Hmm.
you want it to go really low at night. So the tree kind of goes back into a hibernation state. So basically, you're getting that fluctuation of temperature. But
Yeah.
what happens during maple season is you have a little bit of that fluctuation, and then sometimes it'll go into a freeze out for a few days. So we essentially talk to Steuben Foods usually about 90 days in advance to like figure out our date. But
Hmm.
obviously the weather never like we're lucky if we know a week in advance
Sure.
of what next week looks like. So
Yeah.
usually that's kind of a floating date for us, and they know it and they understand it, so they're willing to work with us. So but there's a lot of moving parts like trucking and figuring out all of that good stuff too on the back end. So there's been quite a few challenges, but luckily I have a really good partner on the farm, Dante, who has been
Hmm.
amazingly incredible at figuring out a lot of the smaller logistics. And I say smaller, and he'd be like he's worked 3 days
Smaller.
nonstop.
Yeah.
Like he's really the main man behind maple water. If it wasn't for him, none of us would be drinking it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, I'm very, very lucky to have such a strong team too, that has really helped us get to this point.
Yeah, no, team is so critical to the success and your partners, and that just keeps coming back and again on the podcast as a theme of their partners can really make or break you and help you really get your product to success. So I want you to just talk a little bit more about. So obviously there is the component of the amount of product you lose when you're making maple syrup. So that's so attractive to launch this product. But did you like what was the catalyst really for you to say we need to bring this product to market? Was it the creativity behind like bringing a CPG product when you're in this experience business at the farm, or did you see other people out there doing it and you said I can do this also? What was going through your head?
So I think for me, it was actually my background in health, wellness, and fitness. And kind of when I was talking
Yeah.
about the maple syrup, it's so good and so healthy for you. But the same with maple water. So as we started doing this deep dive in, is this something that we want to create? Is this something that we want to bring to market? My background, I think it was really frightening to me, some of the statistics that are out there. And what's wild to me is like a lot of this is kind of coming to point now, and I feel like you see it like the microplastics, and this
Yeah.
this bottled water company is tested positive for this, and this bottled water's. So it's been one of those things. But over the last few years, none of this is new information. It was kind of like we were trying to figure out what bottling we wanted to be in. And through all of this research, it just came out more and more apparent to us that
Yeah.
nobody was asking the question, like, what's in my water? So, like, that's kind of
Mhm.
one of our big campaigns with Maple Water is what's in your water. And it's just really getting people to think about it because we're so focused on food and which is super important and knowing the
Mhm.
locality and what how the produce and the animals are being treated and things like that. But
Yeah.
nobody thinks about what's in your water because when you're a kid you're given water and it's just it's in the
Yeah.
sink and you just don't
You
even ask
just
the question.
automatically trust it, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that was like the huge passion point for me was I don't really care in a sense whether you buy maple water or not. Like I hope that you do because I'm
mhm.
super passionate about it, and I think I know like we have so many testimonies and reviews and things like that have
Yeah.
come through, and people have just said such incredible things about it, how helpful it's been, and some of them are recovering from illnesses and things like that. So
Mhm.
I know the product is just amazing and is such
Mhm.
such a great quality. But I think for me the bigger component is getting people to just ask those questions. Like if you're stopping by the gas station and grabbing a bottle of water, like I know even I do now, like I look for the most local source because then I know it probably hasn't been sitting on the shelf for a
Yeah.
year, 18 months, and it hasn't, it had a smaller um footprint getting
Mhm.
to into your hand.
Right.
So I think it's just like asking those questions and finding out those answers. And like I was saying before, not all bottled water is created equal. So knowing what you're putting into your body, like believe me, I get it. Sometimes I'm in a place where there's only one option and you just got to deal with it. But
Mhm.
knowing generally, the better water and having
Yeah.
it readily available for your family,
Mhm.
and what that looks like to you. So that's
Yeah.
why I also loved our subscription model, where it comes right to your door. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to buy it.
Mhm.
You don't have to lug it up the stairs. If, you're in Brooklyn and you're on the, like, on the fourth floor or something like that, it comes
Yeah.
right to your door. So you don't even have to think about it. And then it comes every month, so it's whatever month you choose, and then it's 12 that's in a case. So then what's great is you can kind of layer that in however you want, or you can do
Right.
24 if you really want one a day.
That's a smart idea, the subscription model too, because yeah, water's heavy, especially if you're living on the fourth floor of a walk up somewhere. So you decided to go with the Tetra Pak, and I really appreciate what you're saying about the plastics, and you just like you said, we're just hearing every day more and more stories about how this is causing cancer, and it's today was sparkling water, and oh well, it's not really the water, it's really the liner in the cans, and just so much concern over uh, I guess everything we've been drinking or eating has been slowly killing us. Um so what was your decision on the Tetra Pak as the best choice?
So yeah, glass is always the best. I would
Yeah.
love to be in glass. And if you were to be talking to Dante right now, Dante has always been a huge proponent for glass.
Yeah.
Glass is just so heavy to ship and is just
Yeah.
it breaks and things like that. So Tetra Pak for us was just like the least of all of the evils.
Hmm.
Still has some issues. Some people, I think it's like in California, they can't really recycle it as
Mm.
good as you should be able to. So I think out of everything that's out there that's on the market, I think it's one of the cleanest bottling choices next to glass. I think
Yeah.
glass is definitely always the best if you can get glass.
Right.
Um, but also just sourcing like where your water is coming from is also super important. So like kind of measuring those two out and what makes sense.
Hmm.
I think I was telling you kind of originally I wanted to be in those like super sexy aluminum
Yeah.
cans, and Dante was like, no, you don't want to be in aluminum cans. Aluminum's not that great to be drinking out of all the time. And I was like, yeah, but they look so nice. And
Yeah.
there's another water competitor that's in the beverage and they have the aluminum can and they also have the
Hmm.
glass bottle. And so I did like a blind taste test, and you could really tell, like you could taste the
Yeah.
metals in it. So,
Yeah.
and I've drank it out of aluminum cans before that and like never really tasted it, but when you do like a side by side
Yeah.
glass versus, the aluminum can, you can definitely taste those metals. So it was like shocking to
Hmm.
me. So then the aluminum can got thrown out, and
Yeah.
we decided to go with Tetra Pak.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun to hear the stories of how people come to these decisions. And yeah, I mean, glass is awesome, but especially if you're doing a subscription model as an important part of your business, that makes it a really tricky one
Yeah, and
to
it
do
just and it
successfully.
breaks. Like we use glass for our maple syrup because you bottle at 200 degrees, and I'm like, if you're in plastic, there's a whole bunch of plastic that's out there that they say is really good, but
Yeah.
I just don't really trust it when you're bottling at 200 degrees. I don't know. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
with us, we're not bottling, at a really high rate, so I don't think that you're
Yeah.
necessarily getting that transfer. But the glass that we bottle the maple syrup in, we've had a bunch of people, like we had this big company in Austin that loved our product, and it was so hard to ship to them and like get product to them without breakage because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We tried everything. We've like put fragile stickers everywhere. We bubble wrapped
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
as much as we could, but it just feels like that's the biggest problem with glass, as well as just the breakage and like the product loss and things
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, you still need to make the best financial decision for the business. If you're losing, too much in transit, it's not good for either end of the party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so tell us now. So you mentioned already a subscription model, a little bit of retail. What's the channels that you're going to be focusing on to continue to get the product out?
Yeah, so I think for us, we're really big on like the local mom and pop organic markets that are in the neighborhoods. The product's doing so well in there,
Hmm.
as well as we've been, really in a lot of Pilates, yoga studios, CrossFit. The CrossFit community really enjoys and loves the product because it's so clean and it's all natural
Yeah.
and there's nothing added. So it's done really well there. And we also have a bunch going on this summer up in the Hamptons. We've got a couple ambassadors that are based out of the Hamptons, so they'll be doing some
Hmm.
stuff up there and in some of the boutiques. But so yeah, I don't know what the future really holds for
Hmm.
Maple Water. I think what's really unique about our business is really the farm and being able to come
Hmm.
to the farm and see where your water is coming from. So when I like close my eyes and like really envision the future, we also have a spring on the property. So we might eventually go into like spring water as well, and
Hmm.
doing some really unique retreats on the farm, and where you can really just be able to unplug and get with like be back with
Nice.
like in tune with nature and really ground, and doing some really unique water, kind of like what you would experience at a winery,
Hmm.
but a sober version
Yeah.
where you can come in and you can taste the different waters and
Yeah.
taste the seasonality and things. And I think that's always been a huge goal of mine, is really bringing the community back to
Yeah.
agriculture and really understanding that, we should be asking these questions of where our food and our water is coming
Hmm.
from, and then also being able to taste the difference in it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's where I see the future. Not necessarily. I don't know. I probably need to be
Yeah.
doing more retail. If you were to ask Dante that question, he would have a totally different answer. I am
Yeah.
more of like the fluff, and like I want to do something that's amazing to give back. And Dante's
Hmm.
more like the numbers. Like we have to pay for all of these things.
Yeah. Well, it's a good partnership. It sounds like you keep each other balanced.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure.
I'd love to. So there's two things that you mentioned. First, I'll touch upon the seasonality. So you mentioned it earlier as well, but I'm glad that you brought it back up because I kept thinking about that. And just like in general, how, we should be getting more in touch with the seasonality of food and in this case, our
Hmm.
beverages. Uh, Instead of always expecting that everything should be convenient and should be at our disposal 24/7. So
Hmm.
I love what you're doing
Hmm.
to tie that into the experiences at the farm.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, everybody from a child to an adult to, to have them come for that educational experience and really learn about where our foods are coming from. And for, for young children to experience that, like that's knowledge for life, right? Like that's going to get imprinted in their brain of like, oh, that time when I got to actually drink water out of a stream or directly out of a tree or, uh, whereas, I think adults really kind of need to unlearn a lot of some bad behaviors that we've been, told to maybe have been okay along the way. Um, so very cool on the experience side of it, and excited to see what you're continuing to do there.
Yeah, no, us as well, and I think that that's like you said, it's been amazing. We have some homeschool groups that come in, and the kids are always just like amazed. They're like, "Wait, water like come is the first part of like," and then like they're like maple syrup comes from maple trees, and
Oh,
it is it's been it's the farm piece has also been just such an amazing part to be a part of. And just seeing, people's faces light up as they, find out more about it. And they're like, wait, that like this is how and then we have people that come back every 3 to 4 months for maple syrup and come back to the
mhm.
farm. We also have a ton of people that live or have, second, third homes in the area that, every time somebody new comes to visit, like they have to come to the tour and tasting again. Like we have people that have
Yeah,
done our tour and tasting, a dozen times, and we're like, nothing has changed the last time you've been here, but like they want to bring their friends and their family. So I
yeah,
think that that's been really magical to be a part of is the educational component, but then as well as, getting people excited about where their food's coming from.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as you're 2 years into this journey, but obviously experienced in other parts of the business world, what would be some advice that you would have for other emerging brands as they're navigating their road?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think you need to find your why and, what makes you stand out. There's so much noise, I feel like, in the industry, and um I think just really bringing a product to life that or a business to life that really is truly being beneficial. I think, there's been so many hard days when it comes to maple water and even the farm. The farm,
Hmm.
everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, it's, come to the farm. It's the most scenic and beautiful place you'll ever be." Everyone tells us it's like
Yeah.
walking through a postcard.
Mm,
But there's days where I'm like, what am I doing? And
yeah.
it's 450 acres. Something's always breaking. Something always needs to get fixed. There's, staffing issues. There's this, there's that. Like the list can go on and on. And so there's a lot of times where you want to run away.
Yeah.
And so I think really hunkering
Well,
down and figuring
450 acres. I'm sure you can find a little spot to just hunker down and be like, okay, deep breaths here.
yeah, exactly. So I think just hunkering in and finding out your why and just
Yeah.
really, coming back to that. And I think if you're offering an amazing product that is really solving a problem or creating like our other big avenue is like really we're trying to create this community too at
Hmm.
the farm and having people come out. So I think figuring out what that looks like and really being passionate about it is really important, and I think that that will take you farther because
Hmm.
there's going to be days that you want to quit. There's going to be days where
Yeah.
you're done, and there's going to be days where you have to like just walk away and breathe. But I think having that
Yeah.
and coming back to it and remembering that at least, once a day or once a week you kind of come back to it and think about those
Yeah.
types of things. So yeah, I think that I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
I think
No,
so.
that's it. That's a good one. Do you like for your why, do you is it just in your head and you just kind of keep mentally going back to it? Do you have it written down? Do you have like a visual that you use? What's your tactic?
That's a good question. I definitely we have it written at the farm in the
Hmm.
office. But mostly it's in my head.
Uh-huh.
I've been trying. We just recently moved. So I'm now I have like a new office. So I'm really hoping to get a little bit more organized this year. So it'll eventually
Yeah.
be in this office, I'm sure,
Hmm.
as well, just because it's so good to see it visually. But it's mostly in my head. I think
Yeah.
when I get upset or frustrated, you know, it's really just bringing this product to the masses and getting them to ask the
Hmm.
question, "What's in your water?"
Yeah.
it's such a wild ride when you start, you can do a deep dive and go down a dark rabbit hole of what's in our water, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of it is so wild. So I think that that's one of the biggest things. I like never really thought about this. This might be TMI, but um like when I was doing research and we were trying to figure out bottling and watering.
Uh-huh.
And so now there's more and more studies that there's
Uh-huh.
so much estrogen in our water source than ever before, because more women are taking birth control than ever before, and they're
Uh,
going to the bathroom in the water system. There's
uh-huh.
so much estrogen in our water source right now that frogs, fish, and turtles are
Uh-huh.
turning from male to female, which like
Uh-huh.
blew my mind. Cause like, of course, that makes complete sense. But then you think about
Yeah.
it, like the people that are on antidepressants and all of these other things, or the drugs that are just getting flushed down the toilet, grandma dies
Yeah.
and like nobody knows what to do with any of this stuff. Just throw it down the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that for me was like one of the biggest red flags of like, that
Yeah.
makes so much sense. Why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we thinking about it? And I last year had a baby, so thinking about every little thing that goes into his mouth, and like
Uh-huh.
what bottled water to pick from and things like that. So it's just such a topic, because
Yeah.
you can survive without food, you can't survive without water, and if you're giving yourself a really bad water source, it's only gonna make you feel less healthy and less
Right.
alert and aware. So I think that's my why in a long-winded way.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, certainly for moms out there, but I'm sure for all parents, there is something about when you have a child, especially your first child, that you all of a sudden completely reevaluate everything that you consume and put on your body, because now you're like, oh my God, I have this brand new person and everything is new to them, and everything, they've never had this lotion on their little legs before, or they never had this water if they're doing formula, right? Like mixing into it. Like, so yeah, it's just like, wow, reading labels like you never have before, doing research like you're saying. Yeah, it's really an eye-opening experience to evaluate from that perspective when you have, the blank slate of a brand new baby.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't want to
Yeah.
mess this up. It's
Yeah.
all on me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then fast
Well,
forward, and now he's like, licking rocks. So
yeah. And then you're like, well, I guess, you get some good, those germs are helping your immune system, right? So keep going, playing the dirt.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, Nicole. So as we're kind of winding down here, there's one more question I need to ask, and kind of looking back, take a look back at the last 2 years, take a look back at, your career in general. What do you think has been your recipe to revenue?
Hmm. I knew this question was coming. So I think, I was like watching all your episodes. And I loved everyone's unique answers.
Such great answers.
So many great ones. I think for me, it's always been about the community that we're building. And no matter where I was, whether that was working for Flywheel and helping opening up studios in South Florida and us building the community there. And the same thing with Delicious Raw when we were hoping open up juice franchises. It was really just building the community wherever, that new location was going, and
Uh-huh.
really kind of building that. And I think that I've carried that over to the farm, and with the maple water, that's kind of my hope, is to create this amazing community that you can come out and you can visit the farm and really get a chance to be back and be in nature. And we offer yoga on the farm every Thursday and Saturday, and
Uh-huh.
you can come and do yoga on our boathouse. And the boathouse is literally on top of the lake, so it's one of the most
Nice.
magical places to do yoga in the world, I
Yeah.
swear. And I've
Yeah.
done yoga everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not being biased. You're just surrounded by trees and nature, and
Yeah.
you're just overlooking the lake, and it's just so
Sounds very
beautiful. And
peaceful.
so I think that the biggest thing for me has always been, kind of coming back to that sense of community, and really being able to create something unique for our consumer. And so when they step on the property, we're super excited to educate them, but then also kind of bring them this really unique product that they can get sent directly to their door. And I think the other biggest focus is really kind of engaging them into coming to agriculture and not being so I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just buying at the grocery store and not really thinking about where
Hmm.
their beverages are coming from or their food's coming from. And I think
Yeah.
that we're definitely hitting that place where people are really asking those questions. So I'm super excited to be bringing maple water to the public and having them able to try something that's unique. But I
Hmm.
think that's kind of been our recipe to revenue is really just really engaging with the community, creating something that's truly unique where you can really be a part of it and come and explore it and try it firsthand. And it's not just
Yeah.
something you're buying and not having any personality behind it.
Yeah. Fantastic. And where can everybody find you and order some maple water?
Yeah, so PoconoMapleWater.com. So you can go on, you can order it, you can subscribe. We also, if you're a part of like a big triathlon or 5K or anything like that happening in the Philadelphia, New York, and New Jersey regions,
Mhm.
always reach out to us if we're available and somebody's available to come out on the marketing team. We'll come and we'll support it and we'll bring samples. So
Awesome.
if you're in the Northeast, definitely reach out to us. We're happy to come out and support and a ton of like if you go onto our website, there's a couple of different local places that you can also buy a lot of like local organic grocers and some Pilates and yoga studios and things like that.
Fantastic. Nicole, thank you so much for coming and joining me today on Recipe to Revenue. It's so great to hear your story and to learn more about the product.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks for listening to Recipe to Revenue. If you're building in the food, beverage, or hospitality space, you're in the right room. Subscribe for more founder stories and real world growth strategies. And if this episode helped, share it with a friend and leave a review. It's how this show grows. For tools, templates, and ways to work together, visit recipetorevenue.co. I'm Leah Messina. Until next time, keep cooking up the next revenue stream.